Hey there, welcome to another episode of Dotting with Jackie from the Studio for Art and Craft here in Cobleskill, New York. So this is the plate we're doing today. I know these aren't children, so I'm allowed to admit that I have favorites, and I am completely in love with this plate. I cannot wait to show it to you because, I don't know, I love both the pattern and the colors. I just love how it came out. So anyway, I call it Summer Blast. And if you're setting up to do this with us, you've got your kit from the studio. So your kit contains, I'm switching out, your already base coated plate. And you can see it's got the markings on it. And you've got your, what we call paint pods, right? So it's got all the glazes that you'll need to do the project. You either purchased for this or you've already purchased a dotting tool. The dotting tool has 8 points on it, starting with point number 1, which is the smallest. Okay, tip over here, and it goes all the way around, woo, up to tip 8. I know, silliest little things. This is just a little magical tool, makes it so easy. You've got a paper towel, which you can dampen up, and that'll be what we'll use to clean the tool in between colors. And you've got a paper placemat, which you probably have underneath your plate, and that's kind of a cool thing because you can use it to turn your plate around with, so you don't have to touch your plate so much. Make sure your hands are clean; they don't have oils and stuff on them because that can mess with the glaze. I know everybody thinks it's paint, but it's not really paint; it's glaze. It's going to go in the kiln and get fired and make it all pretty and shiny. So we're going to mostly be doing, what's fun about this is it has several different designs in this plate, and the combination of the colors, I think those are the two things that make it cool. It doesn't have too much crazy fancy steps in it, so it's just a matter of diligence and sticking with it. And lucky for you, you can always put me on pause as you need to. So we're going to get started starting with tip 8. You'll notice on your pods that each one is it's numbered with letters A, B, C, D, E, F. We're going to start with color A, which is probably the first one on the left, and that's actually white. It's got a blue tinge to it, but that's just so it shows up on white, but that fires out. And we're just going to take tip 8 and dip and dot a yellow circle right down there in the center, okay, on the center marking. Then we're going to take tip 3, also with the white. I'm going to sit down so I can get a little bit closer here. I think I can still see you. And you'll notice that around that center dot are some hash marks. I'm going to want you to put a little dot on each hash mark, okay? Now what you'll notice, I dot kind of slowly when I'm starting out. You can always add more. You can't add less, you know? So go lightly, and then if you need to, just hold your tip down a little longer if your dot didn't come out large enough. But essentially, you don't want to just go all out on as soon as you touch the plate, especially with a new color, because it's really, we can't clean as we go. We have to clean at the end. I'll show you how to do that, but it's, why there's enough problems. You don't want them to touch. So anyway, just dot lightly. Different glazes will go on differently based on the viscosity of that particular glaze. Different colors, the chemistry of color makes them some a little bit thicker, some a little bit thinner. So always go lightly if you're not really sure. So anyway, that's our first 2 steps. We're going to switch over to tip 4, and we're going to go on to color B. Not that we won't come back to A, but we're going to go on to B, which is an antique white. And we're going to do what I call triangulate. So we have the 2 dots here, and we're going to put another dot up here, okay? And that kind of, can you see how that makes a little triangle? You notice how slowly I did that? Because I want to make sure I'm far enough away so that my glaze doesn't run into the dots I already have, but not so far away that I'm in a different neighborhood. So I go slowly because I can always take it up, and it doesn't matter if my dots are maybe a little bit smaller. But this seems to be working. This is a great spot, so it seems to be working. I have to admit, I have the advantage of working on a turntable. Use a banding wheel. If you can find an inexpensive turntable, that would be a really good idea. If you're doing a lot of these, I use a banding wheel, which we use for pottery, that's kind of expensive. So people are always like, oh, I would like one of those. I'm like, no, you don't. They're like $75. It's ridiculous. I get it if you're banding on pottery, but it's more than what we need for turning the plate. Okay, and now we're going to go to just tip number 1, the smallest tip. Go back to our color A and just put a small dot in between each one. And again, this is one to go really lightly on to start with, because it's better if we don't run into one of the dots on either side. So nice and lightly. Can always make those dots bigger. Sometimes you might pick up too much paint on your tip, so just go back and clean it off and start again. Okay? Don't think, oh, I dipped, I must, must live with this. It's like, nope, you don't have to live with it. Not a big deal. Okay. So now we're going to actually just move up to tip 2, and we're going to stay with color A, and we're going to put a little dot just above the bigger dot, she said brilliantly. And what you'll notice is that let me find a pointing device. Here we go. Always a paintbrush handy. So here's like that ray, okay? Right now, it looks like I'm in pretty good shape. All of my bigger dots here are on a ray. Sometimes I go a little bit off. It's not a big deal. It's just that what I want to say now is you want you to focus on being on the ray. So even if your previous dot was a little wonky, focus now on getting back on message. Get on the ray so that your lines will come out straight. Okay, I know there's no guarantees, but okay. So we're taking, that was tip 2 with color A, and we're just putting one little dot right about there, pretty close to the start of the actual long ray. And then we're going to take tip 5, and we're going to go back to color B, and we're going to do a little, what I will call a shallow triangulation. Yes, I can make a name out of anything. So what I said is 5, right? I love it when I am holding it and I forget. And so we're just going to put a 5 like right there. It naturally comes a little bit above just because it's such a bigger dot. So I don't want to exaggerate it. Okay, just want to get it on there. All right. Okay, so that's that, as they say. And now we're just going to go up 1 to tip number 6, okay? And same color, color B, and we're going to go triangulate up there, okay? So we're just going to go on the other ray above the smaller dot in a very kind of shallow triangle. We're going to come back and add some more color into this. So once these dots dry a little bit. Okay. In case you were thinking, well, this is a little bit, beige. There's more, and actually that's the end of our beigeness anyway. So we're going to actually jump down to tip 5, and we're going to go up to, we're actually not using color C just yet. I didn't put them in the right order. We're going to go up to color D, which is looks like a light blue when it's wet here in your pod, but it'll be a much brighter blue when it fires in the kiln. And you'll notice, so on what we have, right, we have the rays that are a little higher and the rays that are lower. So we're going to be putting our dot right here, okay, with tip 5 above the lower dot. Okay, color D, again, working around. It's funny how you can't even really tell. They all kind of look like they're the same color. It's a little bit freaky. Very, very shallow triangle, the shallowest of all. And so we finished that one with the 5, and then we're going to just take tip 6 in the same color D, and we're just going to put another dot right above it. It'll be a little bit larger. Okay. All right, all the way around. It's easier to work around in circles when you have, especially since we already have the lines, the rays drawn on here. All right, so that's what we've got now. We've got our 2 blues sticking out there, and now we're going to go back to the ray in between, and we're going to start with tip 5, and we're going to do what I call a dot, dot, dot. So we're going to go back to color B, and what you're going to do is just put a dot, 2, 3. Okay? So we're going to do that 1, 2, 3. Do that all with color B. Now, what you're going to notice when you get your kit is that, either some of these colors use a lot more glaze than normal. So you'll either have 2 pods of some of the colors, like this color, I think, will be one of them. I think there's 2 colors, if I remember correctly, that uses a lot of. Or we'll put them in separate larger pods, so just so you're kind of aware of that. But they'll all be labeled with their color letter, since number makes no sense, so it should be pretty easy. So that's that. And now we're going to just take tip 2, and believe it or not, yawn the same color. And we're going to do something interesting. So this is color B. We're going to go to the top of the blue, the top, and we're just going to put a little dot on either side. Little dimples. I don't know what they are. Just that. This is what we're going to do around each of the blues. Okay? Put one over here and one over here. We're doing that using tip number 2 and color B. All right. I didn't feel like I got enough on there. There we go. Sometimes if you want to try to get 2 dots on one dip, the trick is to just do a light dip dot for the first one and then let it sit a little longer for the second one. And that's how I cheat and get 2 dots off of one dip, because then you can get 2 dots that are basically the same size. Okay? Yes, Jackie's cheats. Now what we're going to do is teardrop. Okay, we're going to use the same tip and the same color. Okay, so we're going to use tip number 2 in color B. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a dot up at the top and teardrop, go dot, dot, dot down to the dot we just put. So here's something I want to just tell you. I'm going to pick one with a line so you can see a little bit. I'm going to start a tiny bit high. Don't be too close to the dot. And then as I dot, I'm going to come in nice and close to the dot. If you're in a situation like I just was, where I wasn't sure I had enough room, I'd rather err on the side of not, rather than running in. Okay? So let me show you that again. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to put my dot like right about here so that I can come nice and close to the dot that I'm going around. Now, the other thing you can do is you can always put your dot up here with your tip number 2 and come around. And then sometimes I'll go down to tip number 1 over here so that this dot isn't too big. When you're dealing with these teeny tiny tips, like tip 1 and tip 2, I feel like Dr. Seuss, thing 1 and thing 2, it's not really such a big deal. They never kind of get too out of control. So you'll see, sometimes people will look at it and go, okay, so she has 2 dots on each side, right? The one at the top and then 1, 2. But everybody dots differently. I'm a fairly heavy dotter, so my dots might be bigger than yours. If you have room for 3 dots, go ahead and have 3 dots. And the other thing I'll tell you, wait, there's more. You may not always have the same number of dots on each side, unless the number is crazy different, like 8 on one side and 3 on the other. It really doesn't matter. It's the overall look that you're going for, so that's what'll stand out. All right, and then we're going to do another teardrop around that. We're going to go up to tip number 3. Okay, and we're going to go to color D. And repeat. But remember, do the whole thing where you kind of go up a little higher and then come nice and close in. And now you're going to take this. I ran out, it stopped dotting, so then I don't redot with the same tip. I go down a tip so that my dot that I start here doesn't come out too big. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do this side next, so that I definitely don't have too much, and then even go down 1 more to 1 to finish up over here. Okay? So I'll keep doing that, starting with tip number 3 in color D. Start on the line, and now come nice and close. Definitely running out. Sometimes it can be just as simple as like how long your paints have been open, how much they've been exposed to the air in terms of how long they'll stay on your tip for, sometimes it's you, if you will. So what I'll do sometimes is I started with a 3 and I'll continue with 3 on one side, but when I go to the other side, I don't want to start with 3 again, because look, the first 3 makes this big dot. I want to dot more like this size, so I go down for the second side, I'll dip with tip number 2. And that'll make it align better. And if you're not sure, like when you have to redip, you can always go, sometimes I'll redip a dot I already did, just to, so rather than start fresh, okay? So for me, that's about 5 dots in case anybody is really, really wanting to know. Oops, the last one, there was nothing left to give. All right, so I've got my dot at the top, a little bit high, then I come in nice and close, 4, 5. I'm a counter, I admit it. But that's how I know that sometimes I have more dots or fewer dots. Also an English major, so. Get the difference between fewer and less. All right, up a little bit high. Any stray glaze marks, you might get, like there's one over here. I'll deal with that at the end. That's really the better way to deal with that. Okay, so there's my second teardrop. Then I'm going to do a third one with color A, B, C, D, E, F. Also skipping one. The darker blue is what we're going for here, in case you want to know. We're also going to just stick with tip 3, though, okay? And the thing about this one is you might find that you can't go all the way around. Here's my brilliant answer to that. Don't. Don't run the risk of cutting into something or hitting something you've already got, okay? It's just not worth it. So if you start up here and you come around and it has to end right here, it ends right there. It will not significantly matter in the finished design. And if you look at, like for me, mine are really tight, whereas the first one of these I was very loose. I had a ton of room. So it's going to be different for everybody. But the point is, for me, like on this one, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking I'm going to run out of room. I'm not really going to go around all the way around on any of them. I'm going to change up the pattern a little bit so that it doesn't go all the way around. And if I do go all the way around, I'm just going really lightly. I really don't know sometimes, even if the same person like me does the plate multiple times, they all come out a little bit differently. So don't judge yourself, just adapt. But also know that certain things, like what I'm talking about, in terms of whether the dots go all the way around or just part of the way around, doesn't really make a difference in the overall design, particularly this design. There's so much going on by the time we're done with it. Okay, so we're teardropping. This is the end of our teardrop here. I got to clean this tip up. I got some paint on and a bigger tip here, and it just keep leaving it places. Really wasn't what I wanted to do. Okay, I'm just going to put some up here because I need to. Okay. All right, so that's the end of my teardrop episode. Well, the first row of teardrops anyway. We will actually have a total of 3. But this is the basis of our inside design. I will show you, since sometimes I forget at the end. So you'll notice in this case, like I have a stray mark over here and over here. And I don't usually clean them up as I go because I don't know if I might just end up going over it. Oh, Iris, thank you. This is going to be up on the website probably tomorrow. But anyway, my point is, pretend we were done and I had a stray mark I didn't want. I have the end of a paintbrush here that's just got a little chisel end. You can use a little nail file or something and just very gently focus on scraping only the extra paint off. You can't scrape too deep because if you take the base coat off, I probably can't tell until I fire it. And once I fire it, I'll know that you scraped the base coat off. And I can try to fix it, but I really try not to fire things multiple times if I don't have to. It can really mess things up. So I'm just doing a few little things here just because I want to be able to show you. But see, this is a good example. Don't play with wet glaze because you mess it up. Okay? How about we think about me maybe following my own advice next time? All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a little double dotting before we leave the middle here. And double dotting is where we add a little bit. Now, I just want to point something out. If when you add a second color on top of a color, the paint can get too thick. So I want you to focus on not adding a lot of paint just because you're adding a dot. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with, so we have our center, which we're going to leave alone. Although if you want to add to it, you're obviously welcome to. I'm not the dot police. And we're going to take just tip number 1 and then the color D. And we're just going to put a little dot, all right, on each of these puppies. It's really hard for you to see that I'm doing that here, but I am. Okay. And then we're going to, on the next row around, we're going to take tip number 2. And we're actually going to use, I know, wait for it, color C, which we have, no, one second, I'm changing my, that's not color C. I want to do color A, B, C, D, E. I have them open, so I can't really see. The dark tan, and we're going to put a dot on each of these, okay? On these, I sometimes will get more than one because I'll dot really lightly on the first one and then a little heavier and a little heavier, so more will fall or will stay. Okay, so that's what we've got for that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go out to the next large dot in our little repertoire here. And we're going to actually add, now we're going to add color C to this one. We're going to use tip number 3. And we're going to put a dot here, just on the big ones up here. Okay. Go slow so that you don't put one on the wrong dot. Kind of requires a little bit of concentration. We're going to use the same color, C, but we're going to go up to tip number 4. All right, and we're going to put a dot on the first one in this little antenna, the one without the blue. Okay. These, it's okay if like the double dot essentially almost takes up the whole thing. It kind of is part of the look. And then we're going to go down to tip number 3, but go back to A, B, C, D, E, the dark tan, for the second one in that antenna. Okay, so we're changing it up a little bit. They're not all the same. I'm going to do tan here. And then we're going to go down to tip 2. And back to color C for the third one. We're going to leave, just so you know, we're not doing the fourth one. I don't know why I wanted to tell you that now, just in case you were, while you were doing it, you were thinking, it's like, I wonder what one we're going to do the fourth one in. No, we're not gonna. I'm going to leave it alone. Or, as I like to say, you could do whatever you'd like. And now we're going to go to the blues that are inside that teardrop, and we're going to take our last color, A, B, C, D, E, F, and we're going to use tip number 3 on the first one. Actually, you know what? A cheater way to do it is start with tip number 4 and go to the bigger one and then the smaller one. So you can do them both at the same time. Look at me. Look at me go. Now this blue, blues in general tend to be a little thinner, so go really lightly. You can always add more. You can't add less. Okay. The first one will usually drop the most on there. If you feel like you can't control it, just drop down to a, start with C, I mean with tip 3 instead of tip 4, but okay. And that's where we want to be right about now. That's our inner thing. So now we're going to get to work on our circle. I know, I don't know why I think that's so exciting, but I do. All right, so I'm going to show you how to do the circle. We're going to use tip number 5, and sync 5, and we're going to go with our color A, B, C, D, E. I think I should write the colors on the inside of the lid so I can see them. Anyway, and here's the way I do this to make them all kind of come out the same size. So I'm going to the first circle, and I'm going to put a dot on the intersection of the ray and the circle, and I do that also at the next one, okay? Then what I do is I do this second dot on either side, and then the middle dot. And then I repeat that. So now I've already got that dot on that intersection. So now I'm going to come to this intersection, and then I'm going to put one inside, one inside, one in the middle. Okay, that one was a little anemic, so I'm coming back, okay? So you got an intersection, inside, inside, middle. Okay. Yep, circles take a while. There's going to be some, I mean, I can babble on forever, but you'll be, I don't even know if I can babble this much. I'm not sure. I could try. Anyway, we're doing 3 circles, so that's why I bring it up, that it'll be quiet for a little while. While we put all these dots in here. I feel like I should go a little quicker. Not focus so much on quality, since I already have a plate, 2 plates like this. All right, so okay, let's see if anybody have any questions. Nope. Well, I guess I shouldn't stick my head in the light. That's funny. I can see so much better. Okay. I'm just quickening at my pace here because although you can fast forward and stuff, so I guess I really shouldn't worry about you being bored, because you don't have to watch me. All right, so I finished my brown, and I'm actually then going to use the same tip, okay, and I'm going to switch to color C. And what I do here, this is between the 2 lines, and pretty close. And what I do is I triangulate, okay? So I kind of go in between. And that's how I keep it on the straight and narrow, as I'm just going in between each of the first layer of dots. Just always focusing on in between. Now, sometimes it doesn't work out, and then, but it doesn't really matter, because this is just a way to keep you evenly spaced. So if first row didn't work out brilliantly and you don't have room to triangulate all the time, and I can tell you right now, I'm off my triangulation here. Doesn't matter, you'll get back to it. You'd be surprised. It comes back. Here we go. I'm back on it now. I can see. Okay? What you really want to focus on is really trying to keep it the same distance, equidistant, right? Same distance away from the first row. More important, what I find when I look at the design, from above, when it's all finished and fired, is how, I guess what I was shocked about was how perfect my circles were. Even though on this row, I'm not even dotting on any line. I'm just keeping it about the same distance, kind of keep it, an equal distance from my first row. And somewhat keep my dots somewhat similarly sized, although I'm not really focusing on that now because I'm just trying to show you the technique versus create the plate of my dreams. What I really want to focus on, this is why I'm trying to want to get to the end so I can tell you, is if I find that I'm off my plan to triangulate, I can kind of get myself back there before I'm going to connect to the beginning. So that's how I do that. All right, about 3 or 4 dots beforehand, I really put the focus on that. And then I'm just going to stick with the same tip number 5, except I'm going to do it with 42. Now, what you're going to do now is, what I do is I go back to the same method that I used for the first one, which is putting my dot on the ray, because I'm on the circle now again, okay? And then just doing this one inside, one in the middle, okay? So dot over here, dot, dot. You know, I'm supposed to dip in between each one. I'm gonna, now, everybody is dots differently, so you might not be exactly on the line. Just use the line as a guide. It's better for you to be equidistant from the circle in front of you than it is to worry about being on the line, okay? That's what I find makes the biggest difference in doing this, is being equidistant, you know, having these three kind of all look evenly spaced. So if you're not exactly on the line, I think the first one I did, to tell you the truth, I think it was slightly below the line, so I know it works without having to be on the line. The line is just great as a guide. Try to stay equidistant from the line if you're not on the line. Okay. And because, even though we're using the same size tip, we're further out on the plate, so there is actually more room. So you might want to allow just a little bit more room between your dots. It's really infinitesimal. I don't know. Not a ton of space. But don't put your dots, especially at this level, on this circle, too close together. Okay, so blue is definitely one of the colors you need more of. All right, I'm almost done with the third circle. I hope you're not trying to quote unquote keep up with me. I mean, you can if you want. It's just that I've done this before. Ooh, got another comment. April. Okay. We know what you're going to be doing later this week. All right, what did you say? You said circle, circle, dot, dot. Now you have your... Great. I've got another partner in poetry and dot poetry. All right, so those are our circles. Woot, woot. I think one of the funnest, I said that, I swear. Okay, the most fun parts of this when I fired the first one I did, the design piece, was how amazing the circle looks when it's on the finished plate. So I find it kind of exciting because, you know, that's me. All right, so we're, sorry, I hit the camera. All right, so tip 8, we're going to go with our color C. Okay, and that's another one that we need a little bit more of. So color C, what we're going to do is we're going to put on each ray, I'm going to pull this in a little bit so I can see a little better. We're going to put a dot on each ray. Again, it's tip 8, which is a big spreader. Okay, so don't come too close, and definitely go light on your first one till you get the feel for where it's going to spread, and then align them all with that. It doesn't matter. We have plenty of room on this plate. Okay. I mean, I'm not saying go too far away. I don't need you in the next county. But you don't have to go too close either. Okay, so a tip 8 color C on each ray on the outside of this circle. I think that kind of was obvious. All right. It's funny because everything we did on the inside, we did on every other ray. So now you're going to need to suck it up because you got 16. 16 of everything coming your way. All right, and now once you've got that, we're going to teardrop around each one of those. And first we're going to teardrop with the lighter blue with tip 2. color A, B, C, D. All right. If you remember, now we're not going to go all the way around. We'll start up here and we'll come nice and close to get our pointed look and then just stop. And then come around the other side. If you have good tip control, you can use tip 2 for all of it. Otherwise, use tip 2 for the first side and switch over to tip 1 for the other side. Whatever works best for you. All right. I think one of the things I like so much about this design is this like turquoise and sand combination. It's just, I was really looking for kind of something in a different color combo. I feel like this really grabbed me. Plus, I've been wanting to do something with the circles in the designs. I just was kind of waiting till I could think about how to make it easy for you guys to do it. And I think that was pretty easy. Because it's important. I mean, you know, you guys hear me all the time saying, oh, this isn't so important, this isn't so important. And I only say that because it isn't, because it's true. I'm not saying it, you know, to pander or anything. If something's important, it's important. Like if you want it to have the teardrop look instead of a circle look, using that trick of putting the first dot high and then keeping the rest nice and close is a good way to get that look. Otherwise, you'll have a circle look, and there's something wrong with the circle look. It's just different. But for the circle that goes, you know, for these 3 circles that are going all the way around, it is kind of important that they have a certain look to them. Otherwise, it just doesn't have the same wow factor. So I really wanted to wait until we had it looking like that. So until I could figure out how to teach it, basically. It's really on me. Okay, so that was level 1, and then we're going to go up to tip 3 with the 1, 2, 3, 4 A, B, C, D, E color. So tip 3E will be the next teardrop. This one actually just has 2, so all right, so this will be the tanner color. And because we're going up a tip size, you might have the same number. Again, depends on how you dot, but like I'm a heavy dotter, so I still end up with 4 dots because these dots are bigger, which is what I was, but if yours are all small, that's fine. It's a beautiful look. It's just, you'll probably have more dots than I have. So again, I'm working to keep that teardrop shape by putting my first dot up high. And up high, you know, I don't know, is that what, 1/4 of an inch? And then coming really, these are more like 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch away when I come down around the sides. Okay. So it's the beginning of September, enjoying some nice warm September days and cool September nights. I have to admit, doing what I do, we're already well into Halloween because we need to plan and get everything ready, and we did all of our pre-ordering. And I would have to say, of all the years I've had the studio, this is I think this is the end of my 11th. I'm not good at that. Opened in 2008. So this is probably my 11th year or 12. I don't know. I'd have to use my fingers, and gosh, now I'll have to use my toes too. But anyway, I really am loving the new pieces that some of my companies have come out with this year. They've got a lot of these super cool light up pieces, and I've been having fun doing the samples, and I've also been having fun kind of setting up dates to paint with groups all around the area. So if that's something that interests you, you can check out the website and see if there's one near you. Got one in Oneonta, got one in Cobleskill. I think I have one coming up in Esperance. If you have a location that you think you could get some people to come out to, I have no objection to traveling. That's a big part of what we do here at the studio, and I'd love to bring them to you, but I don't have them with me. But I love, so you know, I thought I was gonna love the haunted house, and the other ones were like, of course you have to do ghosts and pumpkins, but I really, really had fun with the ghosts, and I really like the pumpkin stack. So they're really, I'm happy with them. We have Halloween trees, which is fun for me because I've become a little bit insane about painting trees for all sorts of things. Okay, so now we've got, I'll put a pin in that, luckily for you. We're going to take tip 7. We're going to go back to the first color A. Remember A? Such a long time ago. And we're just going to put a dot in between each of these. Kind of, I could say kind of there, but that's obnoxious. Excuse me, I sort of think of that as like at the shoulder height, I guess is the way I would put it. So, dots have shoulders? They do to me, can I tell you? Okay. Tip 7, color A, 1 dot. Oops. Okay. That's that step. And now we're going to work on, we're going to take tip 8, and we're going to take our color D, the lighter blue, and we're going to put a dot above, we're going to put a big dot above that. Okay. Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of a wiggle thing here because I want these dots to be pronounced, and that's how I get more of a pronouncement. Because the white, the color A, below it, I don't want it to be bigger than this one. I want this one to be bigger. So if it's not naturally bigger, I just do a little wiggle wiggle, little hula. Woo! No, is that the hula? Where you go? I don't know. Really. Yeah, like a hula hoop. Okay, well, anyway, I just wiggle it around, and then it gives me a nice bigger circle. Okay. And here's a shocker. We're going to be teardropping around that. And again, it's a two-tier teardrop. Excuse me. Do a little drink in there. Now I'm just going to start with tip 3 on this one. This is going to be a kind of more pronounced teardrop. And I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E, color E, that darker tan color. And basically I'm going to teardrop, and I definitely want this one to be pointed. Oh, yeah, sorry. And just teardrop down to the white below it. Okay, so that's going to be as if that's your ending point. All right, so up here, 1, 2, mine's got 4. That seems to be my number today. I definitely want you to go up a little bit high and then come in close to really try to get that teardrop shape on this one. if you want it. If you don't want it, ignore me. We only have actually one more original row, then we're going to do some double dotting. Or, as I like to say, then you can do whatever you want, which of course you were free to do all the time. But I'm just saying that, you know, if there's something else that strikes you. I have a new design I did. It's in the kiln now. And it was a lot of fun because it was one of those designs where I knew what I wanted to do. And then I just kind of went a different direction as I was doing it, and literally added the final touch. It was sitting on the shelf ready to go in the kiln, and I looked at it and I'm like, you know what this needs? And I went and I added something to it, a design that I had quote unquote finished like 2 days ago. So you just never know. So we'll see how that one comes out. I think I called that one Out of This World. It's a little bit, to me, I don't know, we'll see. Sometimes I rename them when they come out of the kiln because they look different than I expected them to look. But it's fun to try to think differently all the time, you know, and not, when the whole concept is you're building designs with dots, how do you make them all so different? But I love it when I look at the wall in the studio and they're all so different. I think that's kind of cool. And now here's what I want to just, blah, blah, blah. This is the last new line, but I want to show you. We're going to do a teardrop, and we're going to use the tip 3, and we're going to use the last color, the darker blue, A, B, C, D, E, F. But here's the point, and I do have one. I'm not going to start with my dot at the top. I'm going to start with only with my side dots. Okay. What? That's crazy. I know. This is what I mean. We're not, okay. And then I'm going to put a dot up here. It just gives it much more of a point. So let me show you that again. Just going to do the sides. And then I'm going to do the sides. So it's almost like an inverted triangle at the top, right? And then I take it and I just put one more up here, and it makes it really pointy. Oops. Sorry, I looked away at my dog who was discovering the joy of the trash. Okay. So I think you got the hang of that. So instead of starting at the top, we're just going to do the sides. And then go back and dip and put a dot at the top. Okay. So on the sides, it's just the whole dot, dot, dot bit and big tip. Really want to make a statement there at the end. I think thinking about the inverted triangle kind of helps. Maybe it just helps me. Maybe nobody sees things the way I do. Oh, a little melancholy. You know, I just love dotting. I'm gonna guess you do too, because otherwise you wouldn't be here with me. All right, so I don't even know why I have to bore you finishing. Well, you're doing your own thing. You're not like watching. So I guess I shouldn't worry about it. Because I did already show you how to clean your stuff today. So I hate it when I get offline and then I'm like, oh no, I forgot to show them how to clean mistakes. It upsets me. Then I think, well, hopefully you know you can just go. You're just going to remember. But what about people who've not done it before? I think maybe they just call me. I always try to remind you that you could just call us at the studio if you're doing this and you have a question or a problem or whatever. That's what we're here for. You know, we like to think of ourselves as professional enablers. So if this brings you pleasure, like it brings us pleasure, then our work here is done. This is what we're here for. April, I can't wait to hear from you guys if you like doing this one, because I think this is like right up your alley. Okay, so there we go. Boy, whew, I'm a little dizzy. We're just gonna do a little bit of double dotting, not a ton. We're gonna come back to this big tan circle here. Okay, the that number 8. And we're going to use tip number 6 and 42. So you don't need to know the numbers. The dark blue, DEF. Okay, tip 6, tip F. Sorry. Tip 6, color F, and put a dot. Now, this is the one that I want you to be careful on in terms of not putting too much paint down, because actually, I did one of these and it did pull away a little bit, but it pulled away in a kind of a cool way in that it revealed the black underneath, so it kind of looked really awesome. It was much more like a bullseye look, so I really can't complain about that. I wasn't unhappy with how it looked. All right, and then once you do that, then the last thing I did, and you don't have to do this, I just did this, on these little tan dots here, I just took tip number 1 in that same blue color, and I just put a little tiny dot on there. But you know what? I'm not going to today. I know. Isn't that weird? I just don't want to. I just really like it the way it is. But you could take tip 1 very lightly. Now I'm gonna, because I have to show you. I mean, don't take it badly. I just looked at my finished plate and I changed my mind. I decided I really did like how it looked. But you don't have to. If you want to leave it plain, you can leave it plain. And you know what happens next. You're going to let it dry. And if you have any mistakes, you're going to use your file or your, you know, anything that that doesn't have anything on the end of it that could contaminate the glaze in the kiln. It's the only other thing you really want to look out for. All right, and just gently file off your mistakes. If you have 2 dots that have bled together, you can gently use your tool to make a little space between them. Just scrape lightly and blow, scrape lightly and blow. And there you've got it, a beautiful summer blast. Let it dry, bring it on back, and we'll fire it, and all will be good. So thanks for joining us for Summer Blast. If you want to order, if you didn't order the kit already, you just, I don't know, are bored with what's on television and thought this would be fun for an evening, you can order the kit. We'll have it on up there tomorrow. So this is Jackie with the Studio for Art and Craft. Happy dotting.